Hey everyone, welcome to WLBT 3 on Your Side Facebook page. I'm your host, Martina Barksdale, and we are having Ask the Experts. I am joined by Dr. John Damon, CEO of Canopy Children's Solutions, and we are here today to discuss children's mental health and how the current events have affected our children. Thank you for joining us, Dr. John Damon.
Oh, thank you, Martina. Delighted to be here with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and before we jump into questions, I just wanted to drop the website and phone number of Canopy Children's Solutions. So you can go to mycanopy.org, and the number is 1-800-388-6247. Please drop your comments and questions right below in our comment section. We'll jump right into the questions. So, how do you think this last year with COVID, social unrest, political culture has really impacted our children's mental health?
Well, we've had, as we should, such great focus on being physically healthy, right? Um, we also know kids hadn't been affected the same way in the physical health, but what we need to talk about, and I'm thankful that we're talking about, is how we focus on their psychological safety, how we focus on their mental health. Because when we socially distance in relationship and relationships are the context for kids, right? Of how they develop and the way they think and the way they feel and the way they act. And so being socially distant combined with having, a disruption in their routines that matter in school, being disrupted from all the milestones that happen in their life, like prom and graduation and having pep rallies and all the things that really help kids develop in their relationships. It has really been a significant challenge for every kid. And then you look at the kids who kind of came to COVID and all of 2020's disruptions with pre-existing issues, right? And those guys, it's kind of like having a stress fracture that you put weight on and now it becomes a compound fracture.
Mhm.
And so those kids with anxiety, with depression, with mood disorders and other behavior disorders, you really have seen that escalate. And so, of course, these kids will see the long-term impact as we go, but it's had such a devastating impact on so many kids. And so we're just grateful to get more and more people in influential positions in schools and work, their parents to talk about it and normalize it with them so that they don't feel alone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great that we're able to normalize talking about children's mental health. Another question I have are what are the long term effects of this trauma during COVID on their mental health?
Yeah, so I'm sure there'll be incredible studies over time to look at the long-term effects. What we do know is a lot about long-term effects of trauma, long-term effects of stress. We know adverse events in childhood predict physical health consequences like disability, early death, chronic disease, and so we know that the brain is being impacted because of the lack of relationship. And so you really have to separate. Okay, you got the disease on one hand, but then you got the fear and the anxiety and all that's come with it on the other. And kids don't live in a vacuum, right? They live in a context. Kids live in families, and they've had grandmothers, grandfathers pass away. They've had family members pass away. They've had friends. Family members have lost jobs. Many of them have been in the home with their family more than any time in their life. And in
Right.
some cases that's great, and in some cases it's toxic, right?
Mhm.
And so being in that environment all day has been difficulty, and then disengaged from school, disengaged from friends and events. And so as we look at kind of the long-term view of how of this is going to affect their brain development and their social development, we do know that these kind of events can affect memory. It can affect your immune system when you're under stress for a long, like all of 2020 we
Mhm.
were. We know it's kind of like the gazelle is made to have a burst of energy to get away from the lion, in the moment, but they're not made to run for a year.
Mhm.
And our bodies are the same way, and how that impacts our brain and our immune system, how it can become precursors for cancer and all sorts of things in the lymphatic system. Those are very real concerns that we've got long term. of the cognitive and the physiological brain changes of what all our kids have been through this past year. Um, so, so we know stress impacts us, right? You can see a
Mhm.
president come in, and 4 years later they look different. Uh,
Right.
they look different. Their hair's different. Their skin's different. The bags under your eyes because there's very real, capillary breakdown and wrinkles and changes in personality. So the long term, we're still yet to see, but we do know it's going to have effect on our kids, which is why we got to get them help right now. That's what we know for sure.
Right. Try to be as preventive as much as possible.
Yes. Yes.
And I know a lot of negative things have come out of it, but let's talk a little bit about the positive. What do
Yeah.
you think the positive? You touched a little bit about it, how it's shining a light on children's mental health, but what are some positives that's come out of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. Even if you go look up the word crisis, right, in Webster, um, what you see is the definition of a crisis is just a turning point.
Mhm.
It's a turning point for better or worse. And we always think about crisis as worse, but a crisis is a turning point possibly for better. And so when you look at that, to your question, what are the upsides on this thing? Um, Man, we've been fighting to decrease the stigma of mental health forever, for 190 years, in our organization. And we just leapfrogged that effort by 10 years last year,
Mhm.
because everybody's talking about it. Schools are talking about it. Businesses are talking about it for their employees and their employees' kids. The healthcare community, pediatricians are overwhelmed. The hospitals are overwhelmed. Everyone is, the churches, everyone's talking about mental health in a way that we've never talked about it. So, on the upside here, the glass half full perspective,
Mhm.
if you were kind of on the fence, not sure about mental health and whether it's important, everybody's in now, right? Everybody gets it, and so the stat for us in the mental health field, for everybody to remember, is that 1 in 5 kids are struggling. Period. This is pre-pandemic, okay?
Wow.
Pre-social unrest, pre-civil discord. 1 in 5 struggling with mental health, and that's a terrible statistic. The really bad stat, though, is 80% of those kids never get help. All
Wow.
right. So if
Yeah.
we said 1 in 5 kids had cancer and 80% never make it to the hospital, we just wouldn't tolerate that, right? But
Mhm.
but that's where we are with mental health. So my hope, to your question about what's the upside of what all's happened, my hope is that we can close that gap of the 80% of kids that have never gotten help, because everybody's talking about it and parents want to know, and what do I need to do? So we're seeing increases everywhere, people trying to access care, and that's good. And I'm really hopeful for that.
Right. And you touched on it a little bit about the parents and families. So, a question we have is, as families begin to readjust to the normal times, how can parents set boundaries and rules to help their children with this new transition?
So one thing parents got to really remember, and that's not just because of COVID and all that, but transition points in families' kind of developmental life cycle, transition points are always catalyst moments, right? Whether that's because they've moved, whether that's because of a divorce, the birth of a child, the death of a family member, graduation, weddings. So these transition points are catalyst moments. And because we like routine, right? We like everything to stay kind of tamped down. And when that routine is disrupted, we resist it, we avoid it, we get distracted, we have meltdowns. And so these transitions that people are going through right now as families are going to be crisis moments, right? So here's 3 R's I'd kind of give everybody to think about during these transitions. And these are my kind of 3 R's of life. All right. Education has reading, writing, arithmetic, which two of those don't even start with R. That's all right. But the 3 R's is roles, rules, and relationships. Okay. So what you asked about is what we have is a change in role, and it continues to change based on the new CDC guidelines, whether we're going to school or not going to school, whether we're wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, whether we're getting social gatherings, not getting social. Those are role changes, right? Of what I can do within a particular context, and each time there's a change, you have to have the rule that governs the role, right?
Mhm.
And the relationship piece is, and this is the end point, If we have unclear roles or unclear rules, we're going to have problems in our relationship. Okay. Parent, marriage, boss, name it. So as these transitions are happening, we need to over communicate about how it just changed, about whether you can go now out with your friends or whether a friend can come spend the night or whatever it is. And let's talk about the now, since the roles change, since it's safe to do this, or you've gotten vaccinated or your friends have gotten vaccinated, what's the rule change now? Let's make sure we talk about that because I want to protect our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we have to over communicate those things as parents right now. What's the role change? What's the rules that go with it so that we can guard against and have our kids mad at us for this or we're mad at them or that. Over communicate those so that we protect that relationship.
Right. I wrote that down. Roles, rules, and relationships, because this is not something that just can apply to children, mental health, and families. It's
Everyone.
I'm taking it to me and my family as
Totally.
well. So
Totally.
I definitely took notes. And if you're just joining us, we are talking with Dr. John Damon, CEO of Canopy Children's Solutions, and we're discussing children's mental health. For more information, go to mycanopy.org. The number is 800-388-6247. Please drop your comments and questions in the Facebook section. It looks like we got some comments in, so I'm going to take a question. Um, More comments than questions. oh, this I know we're focused on children, but I know if we can maybe touch on this because it is a question. How can this be impacted by teachers in the classroom?
Teachers play a huge, huge role. And I'm so glad kids are going to be getting back to school because one of the important roles those teachers play is they're a safety net for our kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
They notice not just physical safety because they're often the reporters for child abuse, neglect, but they're also with the kids all day, right? So they notice slight changes in their mood or changes in their behavior or changes in the way that they're engaging socially or not. If they're withdrawing, they're isolated, they got their head down, they're not talking, and they're on the playground, but they're not engaging with anyone. They didn't eat lunch. They see that their food wasn't eaten. So they're a frontline observer of a lot of data points that are very, very important for kids. And to have that teacher to have a relationship with the parent so that they can talk about a plan together for that child to be successful. Because my mom was a school teacher, public school teacher. Every teacher, we have schools that we operate at Canopy. I've not met a teacher yet who is not passionate about seeing every kid thrive in education. But what you've seen happen lately with the rise of mental health, teachers have had to become mental health professionals, right? And what they want to do is teach, and that's what they're good at. So what they've got to do is develop those partnerships, right, with the families, the partnerships with providers that they can connect kids with for care and treatment, so that they can make sure the kids thriving. So when they get back to the classroom, they can actually teach. because
Right.
because kids could care less about the XY interslope or whatever if life's falling apart. Why do I care about X's and Y's in algebra if my family's falling apart and my mom's lost her job and I'm feeling anxious and depressed and so to be a good teacher, they've got to also be a good observer and get that kid help so that kid can thrive in school. Yeah.
Right, that's it. And the mental health of the teachers are important as well, as teachers play a huge role. And I know we just had Teachers Appreciation Week, so shout
Yes.
out to all the amazing teachers out there.
Yeah.
And just outside of current events, what are some unique challenges just overall that you face today?
So one of the unique challenges I'm really worried about for our kids right now. I don't know if you've watched the Netflix Social Dilemma. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So the role social media is playing in our kids' lives right now and how that impacts mental health, especially in a year where they couldn't engage in real relationships, so they
Mhm.
spent more time on their phones and their devices. Social media is in a battle for our kids' hearts and minds, and we know if they spend more than 3 hours a week, they're increase in depression, they're decrease in their sleep. And if your sleep's off, everything in life is off. If they're spending more than 10 hours, they're I think 56% more likely to be unhappy compared to their peers. You see increased anxiety, depression, loneliness, lower self-esteem. So I'm very worried about the role that social media is playing in our kids' lives, cyberbullying, sexting, um, and you get concerned about the kids. They're always being stalked to know where they are and where their friends are, which is can be cool to know where all your friends are. But you also see all my friends are gathered at so and so's house, and I wasn't invited, and so it really drives more depression and loneliness in many times. And so I think that's a big concern on top of COVID and all the things we just talked about, that I think is a unique challenge for our kids, and parents need to dial into that and do instead of just letting that kind of ignoring it in a way. We ought to do things like watch social. I sat down with my girls and watched it. So let's watch it, and then let's talk about this, because
Mm-hmm.
this is a big, they're in a battle for your mind.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand that. And I need to do a better job. I've been trying to model what good tech behavior looks like, and we're eating dinner and so forth, and to give my full attention and not be checking email while we're trying to talk, and have some tech-free zones and times in the family. So and then trying to find things that can engage them instead of just being on the phone. What are you passionate about? I got one that loves art, so trying to push to do more art or get outside to go run and that sort of thing. So I think those are some unique challenges our kids have faced that maybe we didn't growing up.
Yeah, definitely. Social media was kind of just starting when I was, younger. So the pressure of it's everyone's highlight reel. So you're
Yep.
seeing, and it alters your image of like what bodies look like and how
Yes.
people's lives actually are. So understanding that it's just somebody's highlight reel, and um, you know, knowing that that does affect our children.
Yep.
Is it normal for children to experience like stress, anxiety, and depression? You hear it's more normalized for adults, but like, is it normal that our children are facing those emotions?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, totally. I mean, in many ways, let's take anxiety for example. If you don't feel a little anxiety about a test you have coming up, or you're doing an interview and I need to prep, or if you don't have a little anxiety, that could be a problem. But that stress, there's a name for this called eustress. I mean, it's positive kind of stress. The problem is when that's a negative kind of stress, right? Anxiety, for example, affects 30% of our kids. That's a big chunk. That's almost a third of our kids are facing anxiety, and again, 80% of those never get help. So the problem is, while it's normal to have anxiety, when you see the anxiety begin to reach a point where it's impacting their ability to function and do well in life, um, and particularly this past year with all that's happened, we've seen anxiety rates really kicking way up. Um, the problem then for those kids is anxiety becomes, in combination with things like depression, predictors for suicide. It becomes a predictor for a lot of uh, kids, being unable to engage in social situations or perform in school, and feeling depressed. So it is normal to have those feelings. What's not normal is for it to get to the point where it's really impacting their ability to engage with friends, with school, with family, and that's where we need to make sure we take action.
Right. And when you start seeing those signs, when do you know it's time to seek professional help for your child?
Yeah. So here's the big rule to kind of keep in your um, if you're seeing a behavior you're concerned and it's running for, let's say, 2 weeks, and it's not changing, because our default often to parents, oh, they'll get over it, maybe they didn't sleep much. And so if we're concerned, if we get to the point where we're concerned, it's good to get them to the pediatrician to get them checked physically, make sure nothing physical is going on. They have strep, they have whatever. And also to make sure that they've been getting sleep, because if they hadn't been sleeping, everything's off in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you've kind of checked those things and it's been a couple weeks and your kid's not coming back around and it's starting to impact their ability to function, you've got to act. And what I like to tell people to kind of normalize it, right, is, when do you go to the dentist? I'm not talking about routine, I'm talking about if something's hurting. Well, you go, it was kind of cold when I drank that, or that kind of hurt. Maybe it'll go away. If it keeps going, or you get to the point where you can't drink or eat anymore, you're going to the dentist,
Hmm.
or an ear infection. And a similar piece with mental health. When something starts to impair your ability to be you and to function, it's time. Don't wait, because the earlier the intervention, the better the outcome. So we need to not wait around and think, oh, they'll grow out of it, or they'll get over it. Now let's go ahead and make it just as normal to go get mental health care as we do going to the dentist or the pediatrician.
You got to check up on it just like you check your physical health. You got to check your mental. We'll take
Yeah.
some questions in the comments. So, Chad Jones has the question. Um, I know that you have an amazing staff that's helping the mental health of the children, but what are you all doing for the mental health of your staff?
Oh, wow. What a great question. When I started, I was such a child advocate. And then I learned to be a child advocate, I had to be a family advocate. And then what I've learned to be a real child and family advocate is I have to be the best advocate for our staff. That's the most important role I can play, because that's how the mission gets executed. So we are doing all sorts of things to care for our kids, from having difficult conversations around diversity and inclusion and the transgenerational trauma that a lot of our staff have experienced, and discussion groups and breakout groups. We've had care packages. We're having all kind of engagement discussions and training and boosts where we give rewards and just shout outs, and we're having them tell their story and highlighting them and bringing them in. We're trying to make sure that from an HR perspective, we're paying right, we're encouraging them. We have CEO lunches regularly where I bring in a group of staff and we have real important conversations together. We just had a roundtable, CEO roundtable with a lot of our staff last week. We do stay interviews, which is different than an exit interview. Uh, ex- Exit interview is too late, right? They've already made
Yeah.
a decision to leave. So with every single staff member, they sit down and have a stay interview. Why do you stay? What makes you want to stay? And then most important part of that discussion is what can we do better to help you stay? Um, and so we also have increased our EAP program, our employee assistance program, to make sure that mental health offerings are plentifully available for our staff. And we talk about it. I think every time I'm having a meeting and a talk, we had one Tuesday with all of our group, and I talked about our EAP and making sure we get access to that. And this is free for you and your family. Everybody needs a coach and help. So get it. We've got this free for you. And so we encourage our own staff to care for themselves, because, and we talk a lot about the metaphor of, when you get on the airplane, right? And they tell you when the oxygen mask falls, the parent, put it on yourself before you put it on your kid.
Hmm.
You've got to take care of yourself so that you can take care of others. And so that's our philosophy. We got to take care of our staff so that they take care of those that we're entrusted with. It's very important. So.
That is important, and I love the stay interviews. I think a lot of companies should adopt that culture.
Mm.
So we have another question, and I guess it's more of a statement. They've been on the wait list a while, so any updates on the wait list? Um,
Is this? Did they say which?
they didn't say they didn't. Tiffany Reeves didn't specify which
Yeah.
branch she's been waiting on, but she said she's been on the wait list for a while. So she wanted if there's like an update on.
My guess, I don't know for sure which program, because like for example, our outpatient clinics, we have same day access, so there's no wait. It's like if you need to get in, we have 2-3 days a week where it's same day access. You come that morning, you will be seen that day. Um, but some of our programs, like say our autism solutions, our early intervention autism center of excellence, there is a very real supply and demand on workforce. I think we have about 11,000 kids in the state with autism. There's only 70 something, I think, applied behavior analysts in the state. I think we employ most of them, but there's only so many that we are able to hire, and we're bringing on more teams now that the pandemic has got to a point where we can have them back physically, because autism requires physical
Right.
intervention. You can't do that telehealth. We've been doing telehealth with the families, but to do with the kids, it's face to face. And so we're hiring more and more teams for that because the demand significantly exceeds the supply. Our heart is toward that. We started that service several years ago because it is autism has gone from 1 in 1,000 prevalence rate to 1 in 54
Mhm.
in over 2 decades, and it is a significant challenge. And so we are working very hard, partnering with the Institutes for Higher Learning, increasing the pipeline for workforce, junior colleges, senior colleges. We just did a deal with Mississippi State for them to do residency and internships here. And we're driving that pipeline as fast as we possibly can, including hiring more staff. So I hurt for those that can't get access to care because treatment works. And if
Mhm.
that was me and my kid, I'd be banging on every door.
Right.
But I want her to know we're doing everything we can. Our board and our staff. We have a doctor level Johns Hopkins trained clinician that's running the clinic and has brought on an absolutely amazing team around them to make sure that we give the kids the best care. And the outcomes have shown that there's a dose effect, that it's significantly better outcomes than treatment as usual, which we're
Mhm.
very proud of. And so I'm hoping we can get that as available to as many kids as possible. And we're also working on some solutions with Microsoft to see how we might can find some creative ways to use technology and cloud-based and artificial intelligence to get more services to families like them that when you can't get access to a professional. So we're working very hard on multiple levels on that.
Great. And so they're working hard on expanding as soon as possible. So hopefully, Tiffany, you and your child can get the
Yeah.
care that you deserve.
Yes.
And then we're going to wrap up shortly. But another question, just overall, how does Canopy help, children and families struggling with mental health?
So, we have a large, if you think about like a hospital, a big hospital, and all the, you have OR and ER and
Mhm.
radiology. We're kind of like that. We have a lot going on under the canopy to provide a full continuum of behavioral health, education, and social service solutions. Everything from deep end psychiatric treatment to adoption that we started with 109 years ago. And we've done over 7,000 adoptions. But we do home based services in all 82 counties, go in the home and work with families with telehealth medicine. We have in home that prevents kids from entering state custody. We've diverted thousands of kids from entering state custody through that. Outpatient clinics, schools, autism services, shelters, advocacy centers. In other words, there's so many doors, and the last thing I want to do is try to educate everybody on every door. What
Mhm.
I'd want to say, because that can be so overwhelming, like which room do I go in the hospital? Well, go to the information desk. Walk. So what I would encourage them to do is to call the number you've given and or visit our website. We have care navigators who can take them by the hand and walk them to the right door. And if it's not a service we can help with, we walk them to another door, another provider to make sure that what matters to us is the kid gets the help they need, where they need it, when they need it, for how long they need it. It's not that we do it. If we can do it and we think we're the best to do it, we want to do it. Otherwise, we want to get them to the right care.
Right. So you have a lot of different resources for people to help with their children and mental health issues. And so for more information, just go to mycanopy.org. Again, the number is 800-388-6247. Thank you so much, Dr. John Damon, for joining us. And make sure you tune in to Ask the Experts next week. This has been Martina Barksdale with WLBT 3 on your side.